welcome to the Honest Property Podcast with your hosts, Rebecca and Ruth. And we like to talk about all things property, entrepreneurship, and business. So we're here today with Vicky from Legacy Guardian. So welcome, Vicky.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Well, we found Vicky on Instagram because she has a business that's based on a topic that isn't talked about nearly enough. And it's such an important part of planning. If you're going to get into business, let alone property investing at all.
Or just life.
Just life.
Or creating life, like don't create life without having a will, no children.
Yeah.
Just running around, not knowing where they are.
Yeah. So how did you get into creating Legacy Guardian?
Start from the beginning.
Yeah, so, God, it's probably about, so we got married 9 years ago, and then my dad actually passed away 3 months before our wedding, so, God, starting on a highlight. But, yeah, so he was 56, and he was big into his computers, bent down, he was a big bloke, bent down to fix his computer just before going to golf, and had a heart attack. And, like, me being me, I was just in organisation mode. It was one way to take my mind off things. So I did my dad's estate. And then we found out my uncle's brain tumour had come back, and then I helped my auntie with sort of all of his lasting powers of attorney. So that's what you use if you lose capacity to allow somebody else to act on your behalf. It's definitely the easiest way to do it and to get ahead of that. So we did all that. And then, yeah, my husband kind of joked that I was the family, like I was the, what did he say? Try to remember now. Like trying to make something that's not that funny, but he was like, "You're the Grim Reaper's secretary," and I was like, "Yeah, thanks." Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, I guess so. But for me, it was a good way to kind of focus, and it was really interesting because when you're in that situation, when you lose someone who's quite obviously core to your family, being the person who is quite organised. And my dad was very organised. He had a folder with everything in, like he called the folder of doom. But then I think because we had the wedding so soon after, we were just like one thing after another. Then we started a business like in this after that. But then sort of when everything calmed down, I thought, what would happen with us? I think at the time we probably had about 7 or 8 properties. And we're just like, you know what? My sisters and my family wouldn't know what to do. They have their own properties, but they don't have property. My sister even said, like, I've got no idea how to be an adult because I sold her my house, so she doesn't even know how I like did everything for her. So then we started thinking about that, and then we sold years later. So 4 years later, we sold our business. We worked in online bingo, so we had 3 online bingo brands. I was in online bingo for like 12 years, left that industry, and then was a bit lost. Like, I don't know, like, I know you guys got into property like really, really early. I've listened to your story, but like for me, I was thinking, God, I've been in bingo for 12 years. And I think I'm the kind of person who, if I do something, I do it 100%. And I was like the queen of online bingo. And then suddenly I was like, so then I tried to be a letting agent, didn't really find it the right time, like 2020, when in the middle of lockdown. Probably not the right time to be a
Going in other people's homes.
Yeah.
It's good to buy properties, to be fair, but so we sold that business, we bought properties, and then I was like, I need something else to work on, and I got with a business coach because I've tried so many things. I also tried to be an independent estate agent, independent travel agent, sort of, direct print where you print things off as people order them. Like we tried all
very
of
enterprising.
all of this kind of make money online things. I mean, I've been in online marketing. I've been in e-commerce even since 2005.
Wow.
Like, I know how to do it. I worked for Visit Britain. I was on their shop selling tickets to theatre tickets and all those sort of things. I was working there for my graduate job. And I was just like, no, there must be something like bingo where you don't really have to, you can set it up and you don't have to pay too much attention to it to keep it going. And I just didn't find it. I didn't find anything that was kind of like, you get to a point where you've got a certain number of properties and you don't necessarily, you're working to keep a nice life, to go on holiday and do all those sort of, then I had kids, so I take the kids nice places and do nice things with them. So you don't necessarily want to be doing something that feels like hard work and graft, and like you've got to get up and you've got to do it.
You want to make sure
energy.
there's only so much time you have in the day, and you want to make sure it's efficient time so that you can be with your kids.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this before we came on the podcast with you about efficient use of time.
Yeah. So it's like, so then I actually got a business coach, not a business coach, more like a life coach. So he's very tuned into emotions and sort of how you want your basic work to serve your life, not the other way around. I mean, the point I was at, and we
Did you
worked
find it
through all these,
helpful?
worked through all these ideas, and he was like, "But what do you like doing?" And I was like, "Well, actually, you wouldn't say I like supporting people and being there for people." And I think like at that time, it just came to mind that I really got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of supporting people and making them sort of feel more comfortable and taking that burden off them. And because I don't think a lot of people really understand how much of a burden it is to be an executor if you've not had somebody pass away and then manage their estate. Like my dad was pretty straightforward. So it was like they owned the property jointly with my mum, pensions and all of those things. And you go through all of them one by one, life insurances, whatever. But then you kind of think like, oh God, I've spent all this time building this property portfolio that I hope to pass on to my kids. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but like I plan on dying when I'm 104. I've always known that.
I love how you do that. It's such a specific number.
That's when I'm clocking off.
Later.
3.5, 104.
But yeah, so like my kids will be in their 70s. So I don't think my property portfolio is really going to be any sort of gift for them then. They'll be like, what? I don't want this now.
Bit late, Mum.
Howie, get out of here. But so yeah, so then I kind of was like, right, well, we need to think about this properly, kind of thing. I don't know if you've read the book Die with Zero. No, but it's all about life credits versus money, basically. So you've got time when you're earning money and you need to work, but you've also got time when you need to create experiences. And at the end of the day, our lives are a series of memories, and that is our life. Do you know what I mean? Like that is what your life is. And let's all be honest, you're not going to be skiing down black slopes when you retire, that sort of thing. When you're 65, are you? Because you're just going to break a hip. So that's the sort of stuff you want to be doing when you're like in your 20s and your 30s. And it all like really made sense because I got offered a job in Australia when I was 25. And the condition of me moving to Australia for the job was that they paid for an around the world ticket. And so I actually traveled like from Newcastle to New York to New Zealand. I spent 4 weeks in New Zealand. I was in Australia for 6 months. And then I went back through Vietnam, Hong Kong, Thailand. Got stuck in Thailand when that Icelandic volcano went off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was quite scary because I was actually there with my friend Gemma, but she lived in Dubai, so she got home. And I was just like on my own, and it was when they had the red shirt uprising, and like I was just sat in McDonald's because I thought like I just needed a safe place, and McDonald's was that. I was just sat in McDonald's watching these guys with big artillery rifles, like and people just behind a picket line, and I was like, this is surreal, and yeah, so like all those life experiences, like I was a travel rep and all these things. I didn't really settle down until I met Sean and I'd moved home and got the job that I felt was quite secure, got my house. And I think without those experiences, my life would be completely different. And then when I was thinking about Legacy Guardians, I kind of want it to be like, this is a gift to your family, what you're building as a property portfolio. But also like a lot of people are like, well, they're going to get this. So they don't actually think about the interim. So like, I'm going to pass all my properties to them. And I'm like, well, if they're going to be in their 50s, 60s, 70s when they get it, how useful is that? Like, I like people to kind of think around their life, and obviously people with kids, kind of what they want to do with that money, because we save our child benefit. So we save that and we top it up to about £100 a month per child. We've got 3.
Wow.
And they're all going to get about 25 grand. And a lot of when they're 18, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, don't give 18-year-olds that money. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to pay them through university. If they want to go to university, I will give them an
Yeah.
allowance. But I paid myself through university. They can. I know it's a lot more now. So if they want to use the money for that, they can. If they want to use the money for like traveling around the world, if they want to piss it up the wall,
They can get
do
the
what
life
they like. But
experience
it's their
whilst they're
responsibility.
young.
Yeah, and that's the time when you go to uni. You have a good drink, you have a good laugh, you create these life experiences. Like I say, I was a travel rep during the summers at uni. I feel like it's getting tougher and tougher, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
everybody's more focused on, you need to get a house, you need to do this, you need to do that, you should do this. And just piling the shoulds onto kids.
Just delaying all
and
the experiences.
Yeah.
Such a shame.
And I'm just like, no, like go traveling before uni, go traveling after uni, do these things
You're such
that
a cool
make
mom.
you
Yeah, you're a cool
different person. Yeah, well, obviously, I speak to a lot of people about like, oh, if you passed away before your kids turned 18, would you want them to get their inheritance when they're 18, 21, 25? And a lot of people say 25.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'll probably go
It's
for 21.
interesting because we did talk to some other people from our previous podcast who did get inheritance, but it was later on, and they have a different. I guess everyone's has very different experiences and depends on your upbringing as well.
Yeah.
But it's very individual. But I guess like, what's the difference between being 18 and 25?
There might not be any difference.
Yeah.
I know plenty 25-year-olds who still act like they're 18, and then again, there's 18-year-olds
who to act like they're 25.
Yeah. And I think like the thing about this is my kids are 3, 5, and almost 7.
A
I have
baby.
no idea what they're going to be like when they're 18, do I? But I think the thing that I want to communicate is like wills are very flexible. You want it rewritten, it's a little tiny bit of editing, do you know what I mean? Like just take it as a fluid document. It's something that we try and write for the long term, try and write it for as long as possible, really. But something change it. Like it's an hour on a phone call and signing a document. Like it's not such a big deal. And I spend a lot of my time saying to people, you don't have to worry about this so much. You will be dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're doing better than the people who don't do it. Let's just give you a big thumbs up for that.
It's such a good point.
And
you will be dead.
You will be dead. Like, face the facts. And people make it to be such a big, important thing that they've got to do. Whereas I take it back to like, it's just about personal responsibility. Like, you wouldn't drive a car without car insurance. You wouldn't have like house insurance. You do those every year, like a will. And a lasting power of attorney, even more. Like, as long as you pick somebody responsible who you hope to have in your life, like you don't really need to redo that. A will, like you can redo them, but we would say 3 to 5 years. Like it's something that when you think about the time you're going to spend on it and the amount of time it's going to last, it's something that's, I would say, it's fairly easy to put together if you're sensible about it.
You know, I only put a will together when I had a kid. That was the only time I went, oh, that sounds like a good time.
To be fair,
actually think about it. But no, it's something like that that really changes your life, that you go, I probably should think about being a little bit more responsible and thinking about what if I died. And I think that's really why we gravitated towards you on social media, also because you're very free-spirited. You feel like we just click.
Yeah. I went to a will writing conference a couple of weeks ago, and as you can probably tell, I wasn't the average delegate.
I love that.
It was good. We've got like we've got like this little offshoot of will writing Wonder Women who've got really good crack, and we're just like, we all sit on a table and cackle together at what's going on. But yeah, it's good.
Fun. So okay, if you were sort of the anomaly in the room, what were the other people in the room generally?
I don't want to say it because they'll hear us. They say male and like very grey suits males. Like it's a lot of solicitors who retire, go on to be a will writer and stuff like that. Like my aim for that conference was to find out how many of the people there have more than one property, for example, so know how to manage a portfolio. Because when I've been on the training, a lot of the stuff that they talk about is not how it is in real life. It's all very theoretical. So, you know, like how the government put together their renters' right bill based on theoretical things that are really going to mess things up. A lot of these will writers are like, all your mortgages need paid off. And I'm like, no, they don't. And they're like, yeah, they do, for the safety of your family. Like, all your mortgages need paid. Like, your home needs paid off. Don't get us wrong. Nobody wants to have, like, for me, we adopted our little girl, so like we know how important a secure base is. Like,
even more so because you have to, you need that, don't you, when you adopt a child? You need to prove it, don't you?
Yeah, and I think like for any child, like that's my portfolio. We give 3-bedroom houses to families who need that secure base. They're probably never going to get a mortgage. They're probably never going to own their own home. And what I can give to them is that secure base where they can live long term. And when you take the weight of the home off someone, it frees up so much brain space to be better parents. And like, I understand that you should have insurance to pay off your mortgage so that you haven't got that. But I rang up Birmingham Midshires, for example, and said, what would happen if I was dead? And they were like, sorry? Like, I'm guessing this is not a question you get very often, but if I died, what would be the process? And they were like, oh, right. So your solicitor would ring up. So you take that as a right. So you need a solicitor to do this process is one thing. Would ring up. We would check whoever was going to inherit. So my partner, Sean, would inherit those properties. We would check him. He's already got mortgages with them, so that's not a bother. And then we would move the account into his name. I'm like, so not even a new account, not a new application, nothing. No, we just move it into his name. And I was like,
because he's already on the mortgage.
Yeah, and because like what you've got to think of, there's a few mortgage companies for buy to let where you've got to have a minimum non-property income of say 30 grand. So Precise, for example, you've got to have a non-property income of 30 grand. So if that was moved up, if I was working, making that amount of money and I passed that on to him or a child or whatever who was a homemaker, they wouldn't pass that criteria. And I've spoken to Precise's business manager and she was like, yeah, that happened. A guy had 80 mortgages with Precise. I wouldn't have all my mortgages with the same mortgage provider to start off with, but his wife wasn't working and they recalled 80 mortgages on her, like literally 3 months after her husband had died.
Yeah. My goodness.
Oh my God. But yeah, it's
goodness.
So it's all these little things that people who don't have a portfolio, who are will writers and are doing the job, they're doing the job, don't get us wrong, it's great, but they're just providing you with a document.
Yeah, that's why you're so needed in this space, because you actually have a portfolio of properties, so you can talk from firsthand experience exactly what you've done and how you can actually help people.
As well as being a mother who has children to care for, you're that person that was in that room that has a realistic approach into what people actually camped for, so that it is effective when it actually matters and not later when it doesn't matter.
And especially in the property space as well, there's so much, I think we discussed this before, where you are always fed, especially on social media, it's only about acquiring the next property, but it's never discussed about how you hold on to it or pass it down and the process of that. And that is just so lacking on social media.
People know property is generational wealth, but like, how do you do the generational wealth bit?
I always say to people, the property portfolio is an amazing gift, but you are like the person, so you are being that auntie and uncle who turns up with like the best bit of Lego, but you haven't wrapped it, it's in a carrier bag, and then when you go to open it, it all falls on the floor and you have to like scramble and find all the bits. Do you know what I mean? Like that is literally what people do with their portfolio. I've spoken to people who've inherited portfolios who've, one, created a massive inheritance tax burden for their partner, and two, just like there was a story of a guy who had had everything put on an app on his phone, but when he died, he fell off his boat into some water and dropped his phone, and his phone just like there's a video online with this actual story.
And I thought you meant of him dying.
Yeah, and then like
The Queen of Doom, but
crazy, isn't it? But then they had to go and knock on all the doors. They couldn't tell the tenants that the person had died. So basically, it was totally fraudulent, the whole thing, because you're not supposed to be getting your rental income to you. It's supposed to go to the estate as soon as you die. But they couldn't do that because the tenants would have freaked out. The tenants were just absolutely freaked out. So once they got their ducks in a row, they were like knocking on the doors saying, "Hello, my part, like this person's died and we need your details." Like GDPR gone mad. Like,
so how do you navigate that, especially as well, of telling your tenants that you no longer, well, someone has to say you no longer exist.
but can you imagine, like, it was bad enough when it was my dad, but like if it's something like 49% of landlords self-manage, like that's how we got broken, wasn't it? Because we're talking about how we self-manage everything, me and Sean. But imagine, even if you even don't pass away, like imagine if you go into a coma and you and your partner, like even used to, like if one of you went into a coma, the other one would be at the hospital like every day making sure they were okay. Like who would actually be managing that? So like the next step in legacy guardians, because it is really, for me, it's really important to get people to get wills at the minute. Like enough people don't have a will. But after that, we're looking to do this sort of emergency letting agent where we step in and we just make sure the CP12s are kept up to date. We make sure the electrical safety certificates, all of the sort of ticky box stuff is done. Because speaking to probate solicitors, I'll say, right, so if somebody's got a rental property, do you make sure all the certificates are up to date? Like if they decide to sell that property and want to evict the tenant, no, that's a family's business. That's not our business. So the solicitors don't even do that. They just deal with the actual transfer of the property. They don't deal with the tenants. They're not gonna come into your house and go through your filing cabinet. They're not gonna go through all your emails. They're not gonna log into your landlord portal. Do you know what I mean? It's something that I think is like a missing part of this whole thing.
Do you think there's when's the best time to be looking into this, especially if you're starting at the beginning of your business or property journey, or is it like a little bit later on, or like me when I decided to have a child?
Yeah, well, so obviously there's like the standard stuff that the government puts in place. So if you've got a partner, it'll go to your partner. But if you're married or in a civil partnership, it will go to them. If you've got kids, they'll get a first 328,000. And then 50-50 between them and your kids. And then after that, it goes sisters, parents, all the way down the line until eventually it just goes back to the Crown. So, because they haven't got enough money, you know. And my concern with this is that the government seem to be incentivized for you not to have a will, because ultimately, if there's nowhere for that money to go, it goes back to them. So you would think, to take the burden off social services, if you had a child, you have to have a will, or you have to at least put somewhere where your children are going to go. If you don't have a will and you don't have a guardian for your child in that will, social services will decide who that child goes to, not your family. Your family can immediately run, pick up the kids, take them wherever, but social services will be getting involved. And I don't think people understand like that sort of stuff. And you're like, oh, I've dealt with social services quite a lot over the last couple of years. And they're lovely people doing their job. But again, it's those ticky box things where you're like, you're doing your job, but it's a real big inconvenience at a time when people are very upset and they're not thinking straight.
Because they're on like just go mode, like yourself, where you just went, let's just start getting everything sorted, and then you're not even being able to care for yourself.
No. Or the other way around, where you literally can't do any of that stuff because you're so distraught. Do you know what I mean? It's like I always say, like, when you pick your executor, it's like giving the person you trust and love the most in your life like this horrendous job that nobody actually wants to do.
Sorry, Becky.
But yeah, I can imagine you stood there. My sister's mine as well. But the good thing about how I set up my business is, I don't say to have a professional executor, like you don't need that. What you need to know is when you come and speak to me, you can give power of attorney. So it's not lasting. It's just from the time of taking over the estate to discharging the estate. So you can have a power of attorney and give that to a solicitor. You don't have to do it up front. You can do it and then just say, yeah, you can sign on my behalf. You can keep oversight of it. But there's just things like that you just don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's just not like you sit down with your mom and she's like, hello, and when I die, make sure you just get a professional executor and it's going to cost this and it's going to cost that. Because like, I think the thing when you're in property that you don't really understand is that like, it's only the top 4.5% of estates that actually need inheritance tax and all of that have a liability and have a lot of stuff to do. But obviously that's why it's so important for property investors, because most people will get to that point when they'll need to have probate and all those sort of things. Even if it's below the threshold and you've got a number of properties, you still have to go through the process with the courts, which is called probate. But for me, I'm always very conscious that I decided to do this at a very quiet time when I wasn't like what was it? I'd say 2022, late 2021, early 2022, when properties went, and I was like, I'm not buying any more properties. I'll take a break for a year or two. And when you are constantly focused on the next property growing, you kind of forget the foundations and you forget the kind of roots that are keeping those shoots going. Going back to your point about when do you start, you know, if you were looking for an investor, I've never done this before, so I don't know, I'm not talking on anything that I know anything about. But if I went to an investor and as part of my investor pack, I had down that I have a will and I have a power of attorney, so that if anything happens to me, you know that you're protected in that sense.
That's a really good point.
That would come across to me as being like the epitome of professional, like you're just so professional. And what you need to think as well, on the other hand, if someone loans you 30 grand and then proceeds to die, as a very inconvenient thing to you, their estate has to recall that 30 grand. That is their job. They're not doing it to be nasty. They're not doing it for any reason apart from that is the job of the estate. That is their legal duty to recall that 30 grand. Now, if it was me, I would have an insurance policy on that person for that 30 grand. That would pay me 30 grand so that I could pay them 30 grand. Like there's all these little bits and bobs.
Oh, so you would get insurance for borrowing that.
What kind of insurance is that called?
That's a good
I would put that down as like, I would probably say key person insurance. Now I'm not an insurance broker, but I have got
something to look into.
I have got a very good insurance broker that I work with who knows exactly how to do all of this. But yeah, it would be kind of key person insurance if they were part of the business and they've made a loan. You could even just have general insurance that would pay out if anything like that happened, or you could speak to the person about how they've got their setup and how it would all be working before you actually went through it. Or like if it's past that point, then have a conversation with the person, like, if you were to pass away, what would happen to this loan? Like, what responsibility would we have to be repaying it and all of that? And what sort of timeline? And
that is such a good point.
That is a really good point. I don't think people think about that either. If especially if they're borrowing from an angel investor or a family or friend, that's something that needs to be considered as well.
Yeah, this needs to be made the norm. And I think if you are an investor out there listening to this, that is something you can talk about with the person you're investing in to make sure that you have that in place to make sure you can move forward with confidence, because that absolutely needs to be made more normal.
Yeah, and I think, like, to take it back, it's a very small chance of someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s dying. Like, they say that people are going to start living past 100 within the next decade. Like, it's just going to keep going and going and going in terms of lifespan in this country especially. But like, it's just covering those bases, like I say, it's just one of those kind of like, oh, well, this could happen. And if it does happen, it will be quite messy. It's the same like we're talking about on the tenants side of things. If a tenant passes away, it's a bit of a nightmare. Nobody talks about that.
No.
Like, we always take next of kin details. Yeah, so only so we can ring their mums and tell on them. But but yeah, we always get next of kin, because if you can't get in touch with tenants, you need some way to get in touch with somebody who might know where they are.
Such a good point. We had an experience where we had one of our tenants, we had no idea, but she was going through some mental health issues and she was suicidal, to the point that the police had to come in and bash down
our door.
Yeah, I love that. It's great when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're like, I'm really sorry this happened to you, but you need to pay for the door.
They boarded our window. I've been charged with 230 quid for the privilege. I was like, oh, thanks.
I mean, if the worst was to have happened, I think at that point, because we were quite new to
it was right in the beginning
managing ourselves, we would have been at a loss with what to do. But having a next of kin is such a good point. But would you only do that for tenants that are, say, under a certain age, or for literally everybody?
No, everybody.
And how would you approach that?
Like, for example, the same sort of thing. My tenant was really put in a terrible situation by a local drug dealer. So my houses aren't in the best place, but they're not in the worst place either, right? So we have a 5-bedroom house. It's a couple with 7 kids. During lockdown, clearly very vulnerable. His partner I wouldn't say she had full mental capacity, because we didn't put her on the tenancy agreement. We put her down as an authorised occupier, not the lead tenant.
Yeah.
He decided he was sick of the drug dealer. The drug dealer smashed the kitchen window. We boarded the kitchen window. He said he was supposed to be, basically the drug dealer wanted to breed dogs and then deal drugs as well in our house. Great. And this guy, although if you spoke to him, you'd think, oh, right, okay, was the nicest guy you've ever met. Like, you can't discriminate against somebody because of the clothes they wear or the accent they have. Like, he was filling in all the forms. He was getting back to her if we came and inspected and said, like, the kids have drawn in the bathroom, like, get it wiped off. Like, we're not messing about. He would do it straight away and send her a photo. Done. Really good tenant, lived there for 18 months. During lockdown, just became like vulnerable. Said enough is enough. Went round to the guy with a baseball bat, and then went on the run for 3 days. Luckily, it's like on my way home from the beach. So Sean was driving past, had been to Blythe, one of our houses, and was driving past and seeing that there was 6 police cars. Turns up, like, what's happened? Oh, Mickey's gone on the run. They've smashed the downstairs window, which would have been the dining room, but it wasn't. It was a 2-year-old's bedroom. They've smashed the window all over a 2-year-old.
Oh,
the woman who lives there obviously grabbed 7 kids, left the dogs, ran to her mother's house, the poo everywhere. The house, she never came back for 3 months. And luckily I rang the social services the next day. And the social services were like, oh, the police are letting us in tomorrow. I says, no, they're not. Like, I'll just get authorization from the tenant that we can let you in. And we'll let you in the door that works, because the other door's locked and it's not going to be unlocked because it's so broken by the police. But then we get a phone call in the middle of the night. Someone says that your tenant's hiding in the loft. Can we get access? So I was like, oh my God. Yeah, so then Sean goes round, lets the police in, there's nobody there, and proceeds to try and get the house back, because when my tenant eventually got caught, went into remand for 6 months. He only got 6 weeks in the end, but he was in prison for 6 months, and within that time, his family went into care.
Oh my goodness, it's like non-stop. It's one thing after the other.
All these kids went into care. We were in the process of adoption, so we were doing all the training for adoption. And these 7 kids went into care, and I was like, oh my God.
It is so sad.
And then once because she made one payment, because a payment was made once he had went to jail, she then became officially the tenant, and we got her to sign. We said, you can't live there anymore. Like, it's too close to the drug dealer. You've had too much problems. The social services will not let you go back to that house. So luckily she signed the house back over to us. delivered all her stuff to her, and it was a mess. Like, it was probably 15 grand's worth of work to get it back, because she'd left everything for so long that like food had like melted into the kitchen cupboards, and it was just my poor husband. I did nothing. I was so traumatized by the whole situation.
I'm traumatized.
He was like, forget about it. I've got to skip. I'm going to sort it, and like kept all the tenant stuff in one room for them for ages as well.
What did you learn from this experience, actually? Like, what would you do? What did you not do next time round?
His mom, she was lovely. And God, it does just keep going with this story. The saddest part was, I knew when he got out of jail, he would ring me, because he was sound. He was a really lovely lad. And he rang us as soon as he got out of jail and said, Vicky, let us know how much money, like, I owe you and all of this. And I was like, I said, Sean, I've put together a list of what he owes, but there's not a chance we're getting any of this money back. Like, we're not. And then a couple of months later, I was like, Mickey, do you want to have a catch up? And like, I don't even mind like £20 a month, like just show willing. And he wouldn't answer the phone. I was like, Mickey, listen, we've not had any bother with you. Like, come on. And eventually he rang us and was like, Vicky, leave us alone. And I said, Mickey, what's happened? And his mum had died, and she was like his only support, and he was literally on the streets. He had nothing, absolutely nothing. And we were like, God. So like, I went through quite a bit, and obviously that life coach that I had, I was actually working with him at the same time that this was all happening. And he was just like, you've built your business on the back of helping, genuinely wanting to help people. Do you know what I mean? Like, I provide people with that secure base who otherwise wouldn't have a secure base. He jumped through all the hoops, like absolutely everything I asked him to do, he did. I think in that situation, when you're at the bottom end of the market, this is just what you have to be ready for. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a very rare case. I'm hoping we're not going to have another lockdown. I've got another I've had in the past, like maybe 5 lots of tenants with 6 or 7 kids. Like, I don't know what to feed them in Blythe, but they've all got 6 or 7 kids. So it's not that he had so many kids. Like, it's not. People just have that many kids.
It's just it's normal, traditional life.
Yeah, and we have 5-bedroom houses that they all happily live in. Yeah, they're not the tidiest, but they're living their life, and they're
like happy.
Yeah. And I just think that when I think back on it, I'm like, there's literally nothing in that situation I could have done differently. There is a lot of other situations that I've had where I could have done it differently, but we like fully credit check everybody. If they've got CCJs up to 500 quid, we'll talk to them about it, because it's not actually the CCJ that's an issue. It's to get to the point of having a county court judgment, you've had to put your head in the sand for quite a long time and ignore things. And I can't have the tenants ignoring me.
Exactly.
And it's all about communication. And especially when you're at like I say, when you're renting ex-council houses to people on benefits, I love it. I get paid direct by the council. Like, I've got a lady who's got a 25-year-old autistic son, and I get paid a lot of money for them to be there.
And it's also very needed as well, supported living for that sector.
Yeah, I get 1-bedroom rate off him, and she's got another son, so I get 2-bedroom rate off her, and combined, that's a lot of money for that house.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, they're always going to need a home where all 3 of them are there, because that other son's autistic as well. He's just not old enough to be paying his own rent.
Yeah.
We get paid off the council. She doesn't work, but then she gets carer's allowance. So the money she's getting in is more than enough to take care of that home. And she takes very good care of it, and she gets in touch with us for any major things. But it is her home. And we've got a few tenants that are like that. And I think it's a part of the market that people are missing out on, because they're so scared of those stories that I've just told you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the media doesn't paint a very good picture, and that's just like, well, I think we know that the media says whatever, really, but it shouldn't scare you away, especially like you are very compassionate. You've gone through so many different life experiences that's given you that, what's the word? It's given you that perspective to be able to see deeper into people and like really have empathy for people, to go, I know which type of market I want to be able to provide to the community. And I feel like what you're doing is just
full of compassion, really.
I mean, I always remember when I was a first time buyer, and I bought a repossessed shared ownership property. So we had to make sure all the management fees were paid off before I bought the house. I was like 24 at the time. And it took 3 or 4 months for it to go through, which nowadays doesn't seem like that long.
No.
Back in 2008, 2009, that seemed like a really long time. And I didn't want to be the landlord buying houses from people like me when I was buying those fairly nice new estates with two double bedrooms upstairs. Like, to me, that's a starter home. That's where people who are buying their first house buy. So when I went to buy houses, I had a certain amount of money, so I had to buy certain houses. But then once you get into it and you're like, oh, well, actually, everybody who's got kids in a family in that sort of situation wants to live near family. So if their family lives on that estate, they're 3 doors up. We've got one where she lives next door to her mum. It's a semi. And her mum and dad live in this one and she lives in the one next door. And them tenants are going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best kind of tenant.
You've created community with all your homes.
Yeah.
Like, you really have kept family from all multiple generations. Yeah, you created a commune.
Thinking actually of a term for you. You say you used a life coach. I was like, you're the death coach. You've highlighted some really great tips that, in honesty, we haven't even considered ourselves. So one great big thing that we've taken away is getting a next of kin for the tenants, a power of attorney, an executor, calling up your mortgage companies and double checking like what's their protocol when it comes to what happens when you die.
Because mortgage advisors don't know. So don't ask your mortgage advisor. They don't know. Like, it was crazy. One of my best friends is a mortgage advisor, and I was like, Louise, so what would happen? And I know this is an awful thing to say, but most mortgage advisors sell life insurance. So they have a little bit of bias towards, most of them personally, if they've got a portfolio, will have it insured within an inch of their lives. Like, one of their houses will be paying their insurances. That's how serious mortgage advisors are on insurance. But if you're not that way inclined, which I'm not, I was like this at uni, do the bare minimum to get exactly what you want. So like, I knew I didn't need a first. I needed a 2-1 to get a decent job.
Yeah.
So that meant that gave me a lot more free time to drink and things. I was vice president of my college and stuff like that. So like, that's what I'm going to teach my kids, is that
do just a
certain things. Certain
things. Live your life.
I'm in a group where, they're freedom warriors, where you've got to set these goals and you've got to do this. And sometimes I'm like, I just set the goal and work out the bare minimum to get there.
I love the honesty.
It's the same with the will. I'm trying to get this information off people in the simplest way possible. So I'd say, like, have you got a mortgage advisor? Yes. Have you got a financial advisor? Yes. Get me the fact find from them, because they've already took all this information. I don't need to take it again.
Yeah. You're making it easy and achievable for them to mentally figure all of this out.
So
it's so much to think about, even to start with, never mind all this death stuff.
Yeah.
So would you advise everybody who has their portfolio putting everything on a system or some sort of log-in database where it can be accessible for somebody, preferably on a cloud or something? That doesn't mean if you drop your phone in the ocean that it's just going to disappear.
Yeah, so we're actually, one of my really good friends who works with me, he's like a top guy in AI at Accenture, and we're building this sort of legacy guardian vault, but it's not going to be running your portfolio, so we talked about you guys using software for being a landlord. Like, I'm not rewriting the wheel, like, that's not what it's going to be, but we need to know what software you're using. We need to know the login, like, those softwares.
It's like a password protection thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, don't even need that. Like, there's stuff like Google, you can put down your legacy contact with Google. I recommend everybody do that now. Just write legacy contact Google into Google. It'll take you to the right page, and then you can set somebody to have access to your Google account. Same for Apple, same for Microsoft, and then you're covered. Like, it's that straightforward. But what we're trying to do in our portal is to do the full checklist. So I've got the playbook that's just got like, do this. Our actual portal will go and do it for you. to a degree.
That's so good.
Systemising. Amazing. So then when you're not around, someone else, all they have to do is go to your legacy. Is it legacy?
Yeah, so it'll be a bit more secure than a normal thing. So you'll have to say that this person's allowed to view your data. They'll have to provide us with ID, your death certificate, and then we'll be able to pass on that information that way. But I've got like a little QR code that anybody who gets the will, and plus this Legacy Guardian Vault thing is going to be a separate thing that people can get eventually. They get a little plastic card with a QR code that they can keep in a folder somewhere, and then scan the QR code. They'll book in with a Legacy Guardian. Hopefully not me, because I can't keep doing all these things, but a Legacy Guardian, and they'll be like, "Don't worry, like Ruth sorted this. It's all done. We're here to help you. We're here to guide you through X, Y, Z." And it's kind of, I want it to be that sort of like insurance policy to provide the care that people need when they're bereaved. So it's not just the process. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, can I leave messages for people?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can, but like that's not my job. My main job is to do your admin." And to make sure that burden's took off people, because they're going to be organising, you know, when someone passes away, you're going to be organising funerals, you're going to be organising wakes, you're going to be having to just all the stuff, like having to sort people's clothes out and things like that. It's like, it's just crazy stuff. Whereas if I can do, to me, which is fairly simple stuff for me to do because I know how to do it and I've been trained how to do it. But to somebody else, it'll take them a very long time to learn how to be an executor. And it's like you say, it's the same with financial literacy. It kind of goes in with that, is that you don't know what you don't know, do you? So it's
you're a death
really
angel.
hard.
I've changed it. Death angel.
So not the Grim Reaper's secretary. Death angel sounds so much better.
Oh, this has been such an insight.
I could ask loads more questions. It might have to be another podcast at some point.
Where can people find you if they need your help? And I highly suggest you get in touch, because this is part of the responsibility of having assets.
Yeah, definitely. It's Legacy Guardians with an S, co, and then I'll do a landing page for you guys. So legacyguardians.co/honest. And then that'll go through to everything for you guys.
Perfect.
Amazing. And if you want to find Vicky on Instagram?
Yeah, so I'm at Vicky Baptie, and then also Legacy Guardians has at Legacy Guardians Co, and that's on everything, Facebook and all of them. And we share like little 60-second videos explaining what things are, because a lot of things, like, we haven't even touched on trusts and inheritance tax.
That will have to be another. We'll have to do another one if you're keen to go into that, because I think that's also something that needs its own section.
I think a lot of estate planners scare people into trusts, and trusts are a very, very useful tool that I can explain all day long. Ultimately, a trust makes no difference if you haven't got a will. Like, just have a will, have a lasting power of attorney. Because you just don't want to overwhelm yourself with all of this. Like, if you've got the ultimate thing on inheritance tax is you get £325,000 where you don't have to pay any tax each. If you've got a partner, that gets passed on to them free of charge, so they would have double. So a couple would have $650, and then if you've got kids and you're passing your home, anything up to £175,000 each. So say my home's only worth 300 grand, you would only get 150 of that. So I would only get 900,000 rather than $1 million. And most people, the reason I don't blabber on about inheritance tax is because a lot of people haven't even got an inheritance tax problem. Once we do a few little tweaks, a lot of people don't. And those who do, it's a little bit more work, but it's nothing.
And those that do are princes and princesses.
Well, I wouldn't go that the way prices are going at the minute after sort of 2020. I can't believe the froze all of the thresholds and everything. I still can't believe that. But in the same sense, like, it's still okay. Everybody's like, what recommendations would you have for me to mitigate my inheritance tax? I was like, well, can you get married and can you have some kids? Is that
Step one.
There you go. Yeah, I figured out your life plan. Life coach Vicky as well.
Yeah.
So I've loved our conversation.
Oh my God, yeah.
We're probably going to do another one, so stay tuned.
I know
We're going to put all the links down there.
Yeah. Oh, we'll include all of Vicky's got some really great links as well with a playbook. So we'll add that down below as well. And if you're part of our honest community, then we'll have more of Vicky's expertise to offer in there as well. Is there anything else that we need to include?
No, my mind's slightly blown.
No, yeah.
So much information.
Yeah, just so the playbook just gives a full checklist and it's very tailored. So you answer some questions, whether you've got HMOs, service accommodation, whatever. It'll only display you what you have because I don't want people to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like what I did with you guys, like if anybody wants to talk about getting the portfolio systemized, if they're looking to get into property up in the northeast or anywhere, sort of Birmingham up. I can't deal with Birmingham down. Birmingham up. Like I can definitely sort of help with bits of guidance and stuff like that. And I'm hoping to get a bit more out on my Instagram and my Facebook about sort of how I manage my portfolio, because I don't have any complicated stuff. Just 3-bed vanilla. Done.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
I think you're just the queen of systemization. We've had really great chats about how to systemize just managing your property and what insurances to get. So Vicky is your girl. Get in touch with her, send her a DM. And like we said, we'll put all the links below and then we'll likely do another one.
Yeah, let us know if you're looking forward to the next one, because it's good to get your feedback.
All right, thank you so much, Vicky.
Thanks, Vicky.
I've loved it.
We'll catch up soon.
Bye.
Bye.
How do we say? Oh,